All right, so it is 10 o'clock. We've got a great group of people joining and signing on right now, but we're going to go ahead and get started with our webinar today. Thanks everybody for joining. Let me just go through a few quick things that we're going to discuss before we start to hand it over to our amazing panelists for our HR Roundtable today. So for those of you who are getting familiar with Blueboard, this is the first of many, or not the first, but one of many events that we're hosting regularly for our community. And we have some really exciting events coming up soon, including next week here in San Francisco. We'll be doing a workshop in partnership with 15Five that's all about calculating your employee engagement ROI. This is a workshop we'll be walking through really valuable tools for your 2019 planning efforts, with a lot of data insights and ideas for helping with executive buy-in and really streamlining your planning process. So that's next Wednesday at General Assembly in San Francisco, and you can register to save your seat at bit.ly.com/calculate your engagement ROI. The Blueboard team will also be heading to Dallas next month for HR Southwest Conference. It's a really exciting gathering for people in the Midwest, and would love to see you. So if you end up joining that conference, feel free to register. I've included the link here with bit.ly/HR Southwest Blueboard, and come by and see our team at the exhibitor marketplace. And lastly, big announcement from Blueboard, we're going to be hiring later this year our first head of people, which is really exciting. So if you're looking for any new opportunities and have a history of helping to grow a startup community, please email me at morgan@blueboard.com, and I'll be sure to share you our job listing and posting whenever it's ready in the next few weeks. Otherwise, would love to stay in touch with you along the way. We have a host of really amazing ebooks, case studies, and webinar recordings at blueboard.com/resources. So feel free to visit us there. And Danny is actually going to be pasting in some other really awesome tools for you, including a new ebook that we just released all around how to really improve employee engagement and retention through meaningful recognition. And lastly, Reflektive also has a host of great resources, including a recent white paper about how to improve your managers through modern performance management. So very timely, and she'll be including the link online here in the chat window. So moving forward, I want to introduce our roundtable, and really exciting for Blueboard. This is our first time to really test out this format, and I'll go through a little bit of the rules of how that works in just a second. But to get started with our esteemed panelists, we have Cindy Lopez-Larson. She's the Director of People and Operations at Wheelhouse DMG, calling in from Seattle. We have Shweta Miglani, who is the Head of Talent Enablement at LiveRamp. We have Prezi Abbott, who's the Senior Director of People Operations at OnDeck. And lastly, Adrian Hopkins, who's the Head of People Ops at Prezi. And joining me as our co-host is Danny Finkhauser, who's the Director of Content at Reflektive. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Reflektive, they're a really strong performance management tool, and we're really happy to have them today because they're all about facilitating conversations around growth and development between managers and employees. So Danny will have a lot of good advice to share there. And then I'm Morgan Chaney. I'm our Head of Marketing here at Blueboard. And for those of you who aren't as familiar with Blueboard yet, we're an experiential employee recognition tool for the modern workforce, which means that instead of cash or gift cards, you can reward your top employees with things like going skydiving for the first time, having a spa day, learning how to paint or play guitar, things that are really meaningful and help managers bond with their employees through recognition that feels good and that helps them achieve better work-life balance at the end of the day. So the way the roundtable is going to work, because it is a new format, we're going to actually start with Danny. She's going to share how managers are a really powerful engagement tool, and then we'll start the roundtable first with Cindy. Cindy will have about 10 minutes to share her content, and then we'll actually be taking Q&A from the audience for about 5 minutes or so, 2 to 3 questions after her section wraps up. So that means as Cindy, for example, Cindy's presenting and you have a burning question for her, feel free to add that to the Q&A box, and you'll see that at the bottom of your screen. We'll be taking those as they come in, and then we'll be moving on to the next presenter, who will also have time for 2 to 3 questions after their section ends. And as time permits, we will take Q&A for the group at the end, so feel free to keep the Q&A loaded as we have time at the end, we'll be able to answer those questions as a group. So Cindy will be going first, and she'll be helping us understand really how data is important in diagnosing your manager growth needs, and how you can actually incorporate your company values to really support your managers and their relationships with employees. Following, we'll have Shweta, who will be walking through Leading at LiveRamp, which is an amazing program for training young managers that's been a really big success at their company over the past year. Next up, we'll have Tracy, who's going to walk through a new goal setting process that they've rolled out at OnDeck, and also how managers can help embrace recognition as a way for bonding with their employees and really building healthy relationships there. And then Adrienne will be bringing it home. She'll be talking through competency frameworks that they've rolled out at Prezi, and how these have really streamlined career conversations for everyone involved. A few other housekeeping items: all lines will be muted until we go into Q&A. Like I mentioned, please write that out. We'll be taking questions as they come in for the speakers during their sections or at the end. And for those of you who are online doing social media shout outs, we're using hashtag #GrowingAtScale. So feel free to blast that out as you're finding anything exciting to share on Twitter or LinkedIn. And then lastly, for those of you who are joining, to help make sure that your certification is up to date, we will be sharing the PDC code for SHRM at the end of the webinar, right on the dot at 11 PST. So feel free to stick around for that. We'll be sharing that on screen ahead of the Q&A time. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. I'm going to pass it over to Danny, who's going to share really why managers are a powerful engagement tool. Take it away, Danny.
Thank you, Morgan, and thank you everyone for joining us today. This is a very exciting topic, and it's great to be here. It's just such a relatable topic, and I think that really goes to show why we have so many great panelists excited to talk about their programs, because we all know that management is a problem, and we don't necessarily need these stats to prove that good management drives business results. I think probably most of us have had a bad manager and have maybe even left a company because of it. And so there's a clear tie between the health of your talent and the health of your managers. So I'm gonna go through a couple stats, start with some research behind this that captures the problem before we hand it over to practitioners to talk through some of their solutions. The first thing is, this is a really great Gallup study that found that there was a 70% variance in engagement surveys based on management. So that's actually how much managers are driving employee engagement, which obviously leads to motivation and retention and all these other things that show health at your organization. The second stat is the higher earnings per share than your competition, just by having good managers. And then lastly, employee engagement hasn't changed in a decade. Gallup studies this every year, and it's stayed right around that 30%, which is really interesting because we're finding more and more tools that help us measure employee engagement. But as you'll see when we talk about surveys, it's not enough to just survey your employee base. What's really important is what you do with that information and what you act on it afterwards. So that's all really interesting. Let's jump to the next slide. So most managers are actually promoted based on their functional expertise, whether they're a really good salesperson or engineer, and that's actually not the best reason. So I'm sure everyone here who's in HR, you find this problem a lot where the wrong person is being promoted. And so this Gallup study found that 82% of the time it's actually the wrong person. The skills that make someone a good manager are not necessarily what made them good at their IC role. And they actually found 1 in 10 employees naturally sort of have this talent to be a good manager. And those skill sets that they found were actually mostly soft skills, the ability to motivate, the ability to help people move past challenges, accountability, building relationships, and making decisions driven by productivity and not politics. So these were sort of these 5 qualities of a good manager. And they found that 2 in 10 can gain these skills. But there's a lot of people who are just kind of not set up to be a great manager. From Reflektive's point of view, we started out with a performance management product, but what we found is that good performance management just comes down to good management. And so our philosophy is that that's what PM is about, is really just better manager-employee relationships. So the tools we're building now are actually about driving better conversations, driving better one-on-ones, giving managers the information they need to have these, to do these behaviors that make someone a good manager. So that's a little background on what the problem is and why this is an issue for so many organizations, especially, you know, trying to hire and retain the right managers, which helps the talent in your organization. So now I'm going to hand it over to Cindy, who's going to talk us through what she's doing with engagement surveys, and also how this helps her measure how employees feel cared by their managers and how they've built their values to really support manager growth and supportiveness.
Thanks. Thank you. Cool. So yeah, so one of the things that we do with our organization is we're all about data. So we're a marketing firm, so we collect data on how our clients are performing. It only made sense for us to also think about collecting data for how our teams are performing internally and how our managers are doing. So we asked a couple of key questions. How well known and understood do you feel by your manager? And the reason we ask that is because we believe that when people feel known and they actually feel like their manager knows who they are, knows their career goals, knows about them personally, they actually feel safer and have the opportunity in that safety to actually be more creative and take more risks. And then we also ask them, how well cared for do you feel by your manager? And that caring piece also goes back to that place of safety and to knowing that ultimately your manager is here to be your advocate, and that's what they're seeking for you. So in conducting these surveys, what we found is that the folks who had, the team members who gave their managers the highest ratings, they also happened to be the team members who were performing the best from a productivity standpoint. And on top of that, their client experience scores were high. So we not only measure, okay, your clients are performing well from a revenue perspective, but also your clients report back saying they love working with you or they're loving the experience, whatever it might be. So we had both pieces. And so what we were seeing is, great, people who feel like they have great managers are doing great work. So that only reinforced the idea of, okay, so we want to figure out what are their managers doing that is making such an impact. And what we found is that these managers were focused on, well, they were focused on getting to know each person that they managed personally. So during their one-on-ones, they would ask, hey, what's going on in your life? How are your clients doing? Of course, we're going to talk about clients, but their team members felt like they were providing support in asking about what was going on with their clients, and they were there to step in, but they didn't feel micromanaged. They felt like there was enough distance and confidence in delivered by their manager for the team member to feel like they could take care of their clients on their own. And then all of these kind of one-on-one conversations end up boiling up to what we call our biannual reviews, where they focus on higher level conversations around people's careers, around where they want to grow within the organization, and from there being able to say, okay, what kinds of projects coming up next can we tie to your career goals so that you can continue to grow within the organization. But those things only happen by knowing your team members and by knowing kind of what they're interested in pursuing. So one of the things at Wheelhouse that we talk about a lot is, what if we acted the same at work as we do at home, as we do in kind of the rest of our relationships? So our company values are oriented around the same types of values that you learned in kindergarten is kind of the basic idea. And what we have listed here, empathy, generosity, stewardship, we apply those both when it comes to our clients, but then also when it comes to our team members. So what we had referenced before around feeling known and feeling cared for, that leads back to our value of empathy and having managers think about their team members as much as they're thinking about the work that their team members are doing. I think it's easy to get focused on, for managers to get focused on, okay, well, how many clients are they managing? Are their clients happy? Or how much revenue are they bringing in? Or, you know, if we're in a factory, how many widgets are they producing? But if we are only focused on their work, we miss developing the people that we have, and there's a lot more opportunity for really great people to not be developed further within the organization. So that's where that piece of empathy comes into play. And then for us, generosity and stewardship goes back to, okay, we want you to be advocates. We want you to think about each person, and don't worry about what the budget is for the role. We have people who are focused on budget, whether that's budget for rewards or budget for salary. Like, we'll let those people worry about the budget. You just focus on saying, hey, I think my person needs to be paid more because they're delivering way more value than we're compensating them for. Or, hey, I think this person has really been killing it the last couple of months. We should give them a bonus or send them on a cool experience or whatever it might be. And kind of finally, one of the things we focus on and ask our managers to do is to celebrate people. So the reason celebration is such a huge part of a manager's role is because it helps that specific team member know, hey, you are valued for the things that you're doing and for who you are. And it also helps reinforce that same sort of behavior performance that we want from other people. So we have a Slack channel called Wheelhouse Wins, and that's where we will celebrate. We'll celebrate client wins that tie back to career goals. We will, and sometimes we'll just celebrate straight up client wins, but tying back to career goals reinforces that message that this is not just about doing great work for clients, this is about developing people. We don't want people to feel like they're just cogs in a wheel, but actually crucial to our organization. And by tying it back to career goals, it makes each win feel personal. And then we'll also celebrate kind of uniquely personal wins. Like in this case, we recently had somebody say that they were getting a new dog and they were so excited about that. And their manager was the one kind of pushing forward the, hey, like so-and-so's getting a new dog, let's get them a little new puppy gift basket and new puppy parent gift basket. And so organized that and went about just celebrating this kind of momentous occasion in their personal life. And yeah, I think that's what I've got to share right now, and would love to kind of take any questions at this point.
Okay, great. Cindy, thank you so much. That was really great to go through. And I love especially how you guys are tying values back to supporting manager relationships. That's so important. So we had a question actually come through ahead of the webinar from Leslie at Procore. I'm not sure if she's on right now, but Leslie, this was one of your questions. She asked how to really think about how to prepare managers to manage remote workers as their company culture really shifts to include that option. And when thinking about values, if there's any best practices for helping those values to scale globally, or even just across remote offices, knowing that values can be kind of hard to replicate outside of the home office or maybe where founders or CEOs are based. So any best practices for how you've kind of scaled your values to different offices that you'd want to share?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do have one remote office that we started about a year ago. And the key thing that I would say there is find your culture champion or hire a culture champion. So we, in this case, you know, when we started that remote office, we didn't start it with somebody from Seattle. We hired somebody from Virginia, but the interview process for that first person was pretty extensive. And we really wanted to make sure that the person we were bringing on board not only, you know, casually agreed with our values, but really took them to heart and thought about them beforehand and was thinking about how to implement them and how to make something that's abstract practical. And what we have found since then, like besides hiring that person, is that culture champion continues to meet with people in our organization. We're also other types of culture champions. So she meets with our CEO, and then she connects with me to talk about, okay, practically, what does this look like? Oh, hey, we're having this issue here. What can we do? So having that person in another office has been a really big helper in that. Now, if you have a distributed remote workforce and say everybody's online and nobody's kind of in the same office, I still think it's helpful there to have people outside of HR and outside of your senior leadership or your initial founders who are culture champions, and like ask them to be culture champions. So they'll probably kind of surface up as people who are excited to do different things or to be talking about your culture and your values. And then from there, have intentional conversations about promoting those conversations through Slack or through even kind of remote social gatherings that might happen, or if you have opportunities to get together in person, having those people lead some sort of kind of culture, values, conversation or activity.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we had, and sorry guys for just the back and forth on the screen change. I've been having to do that to see all the Q&A come through. Sorry about that. But I wanted to share one more question too from Melissa Barkley. So she asked specifically to the values that you're listing, empathy and generosity at Wheelhouse. How do you also see these values apply to how your team works with your customers? Or do you see that these are kind of separate value systems, maybe one for internal employees around empathy and generosity, or is there a separate value set that you think about specifically for how you interact with customers?
So the short answer to that is no. We have the same set of values that we apply towards our customers and our clients as we do internally. So with empathy, since we're an agency and we're working with clients, we have client contacts. Those are real people on the other side of the phone, and they have their own set of careers and their own set of business issues. And what we describe to people when they're engaging with us for the first time is, hey, we want you to know that we care just as much about your business as you do. Like, we want you to succeed as much as possible. And we'll utilize empathy to either work through conflict with our clients, or when, say, like a client might be yelling at somebody on our side, thinking about, okay, there might not have been anything that we've done, but maybe they're really stressed. So let's think about how we can help alleviate their stress instead of simply saying, oh, they're a terrible client to work with.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. So let's do this. Let's go ahead and move on. There's a few questions that have come in, but I might actually save those for the group. So let's go back into kind of our presentation mode. Great. And we will be moving on to Shweta, who's going to be chatting through her amazing program called Leading at LiveRamp, which is a great tool, really thinking about scale and how you can take a group of cohorts and really train them up into being these strong managers. So we're going to go ahead and move forward and have her take the lead and walk you through that program at LiveRamp.
Thanks for that. And thanks, Cindy, for an amazing session. Hi, everyone. Really happy to be here on this platform. This is a great way to learn from each other. At LiveRamp, one of the things that we were facing is this company has grown really fast, which is amazing, right? A good problem to have. But overall, we had a lot of technical leaders who were being promoted in their positions to not only solve problems with the product, but also start leading people. And as we all know, those are two different sets of skills. Now, we have really a lot of people who are smart here, but experience is also something that helps when you're dealing with people and people issues. So based on the discussion with our senior leadership and our managers, we decided to launch one of our first flagship programs, which was Leading at LiveRamp. And the idea was we need to make sure that our leaders, our managers are ready to take our company to that next level. We wanted to make sure it's experiential. By that, I really mean is we all love theory, we all love reading amazing books, and we wanted to make sure that they were able to see the application of that in their learning experience. So that was one of the basic foundations for us when we were designing this. The other key component was we wanted to make sure that our 7 leadership principles as a company that we have defined And I'll just go very quickly through what they are. The 7 that we have is we grow leaders, we coach, not manage, coach and manage, excuse me. We have less rules and more responsibility. We are perfect is good, done is better. We leverage time in a smart way. We provide feedback and we are responsible. Overall, these were the types of leadership principles that we had. So when you look at it, we tried to make sure that these were the concepts that we discussed. Now, the selection process was really very simple. We asked the senior leaders to nominate the people they thought would be great, who are already people managers and who would like some guidance. We also decided to go with leaders who didn't have people directly reporting to them, but who were building cross-functional teams and working in cross-functional environments, because those are the skills that they also wanted to sharpen and enhance as they move forward. And last but not the least, we also invited those people who we felt were in that direction of becoming leaders, but were not there yet. And as I said, we are a technical company. We are a product-oriented company. We had a lot of people who were not sure in their career path where they wanted to go. Do they want to continue in the technical realm, or do they want to go into management? So leading at LiveRamp also provided that experience for these leaders to come and check it out, to make it easy for them to really understand what it really takes to be a leader. So we actually have been very lucky to be able to have around more than 50% of our managers go through this program. We are currently in our 4th cohort, and it's going really well. What we do is it's a 3-day session. We launch it each quarter. There have been 1 or 2 quarters in the middle where we have done this twice, just because the urgency and the requests were so high. But our overall goal is to do 1 each quarter, have a cohort of 15 people, and we realized by experiments which number works really well. There were a couple of components in that. For those people who are thinking of designing programs like this, we actually did 1 session where there were 40 participants just because the demand was so high. And we realized our mistake because what happened was the cohort felt like they didn't get a chance to meet each other. So as part of the experiential learning, it's not just them sitting in a room and listening to the facilitator, to the trainer, but also getting to know each other, because a lot of people fly in from different locations. We have global locations, and we want to make sure everybody gets a chance to meet each other and spend that quality time. So the first 2 days are basically a lot of the leadership attributes, a lot of the skills that I just mentioned, the principles that we have. We want to make sure that these people get a chance to not only listen to the facilitator, ask questions, but also learn from each other in these table groups. So we have designed this in such a way that we have a lot of experiential and table group exercises throughout the day as we move forward. So moving on to our next slide, we have 3 main pillars that we look at, and that's how the 2 days are designed. The first is, who am I as a leader? It's really important for these folks to understand what their style is. So in the past, we have used MBTI as an assessment tool. Slowly, we are transitioning into an Enneagram because most of our leaders, even before I joined this company, were using Enneagram. So we decided, and that was an organizational decision where we said, instead of introducing several different models at this point, why not use a similar model, and in this case it was Enneagram, so that we are all speaking the same language. As I said, the maturity of our organization is much younger. As we grow through the years, the idea is to introduce other models and other frameworks. But for now, we stuck with Enneagram, and that's what these leaders do, is actually take an assessment, and we give them an opportunity to discuss with the facilitator, talk to the team members in the group, and understand what other types are and how to best interact with them to get the maximum productivity from not just them, but also the team around them. The second piece is understanding my team. So we flow with the Enneagram model, and we talk about, what are the different types of people in your team? How do you deal with one person versus other? How do personalities, how do communication styles come into play? And as a leader, why being calm, why managing your poise is so important, and in what situations do you need to be stubborn versus not, right? And we talk about different situations here. We actually have senior leaders from our LiveRamp team come in and talk about their tough decisions, their tough times, and how do they celebrate their teams. So that becomes a great learning experience. And last but not the least, we talk about understanding my business, which is my organization as a whole. What can I do to take it forward? Who are my stakeholders? Where will we maximize the return of investment for our team when we work on this decision versus that? And we also talk about goal setting in this whole discussion, because we want to make sure goal setting becomes part and parcel of our company. And we are working through it. Some teams do better than others, but we want to make it more consistent. So these are the kinds of topics that we actually have them go through in these 2 days. And then last but not the least, we actually have them do 1 day session of a capstone project, which they do as teams. So what we do is we assign them teams from day one, so they get a chance to know their team members. We consciously make sure that there is diversity in their groups, not just through gender, but also locations where people are coming from and teams that they are representing, so that the way of thinking differs in each group and the best product comes out. For us, the feedback we have received is that has been one of the best experiences for them. Of course, the learning really helps, but they get to apply it. And sometimes we ask them to even use some problems that they see in the company and utilize what they've learned to build a capstone project. When they're presenting the last day, we invite all the senior leaders from the company to listen to these capstone projects. And it's so impressive to see these leaders candidly talk about what's working and what's not. And here's an idea. So we want to make sure the dialogue is not about just, oh, this is not working, but the dialogue goes in the direction of, this is not working and here's our proposal. That's the way we want to do it. And we've actually come out with such amazing ideas that have become directly applicable in improving some of our organizational programs. And then we want to make sure they have an ongoing support system. So we actually decided of using these graduates and matching them to mentors externally. Since we are a smaller company and people have access to each other, we didn't see mentoring as a problem internally, but we thought, why not get them mentored by best in the industry based on what they are looking for, on where they think they need to, grow and develop. That has been an excellent idea so far. We just started it, so we're getting great feedback. So we're really excited to continue with that with a company called Everwise, who's doing a great job in partnering with us. And then we do these lunches, which really, really help. Initially, when we started doing these lunches, I was like, nobody's going to show up. But to my surprise, not everybody did. And they were eager to talk to each other. And we forget that through the day, everybody's so busy at their own desks getting things done that they crave for meeting each other, learning from each other, and even discussing the theories that they have learned together. So for us, the biggest two feedbacks have been is beyond what we were expecting. The capstone project and the lunches that people have done have helped them to learn about each other and learn about each other's challenges. Because if engineering is saying the product team is not working, or the product team is saying marketing team is not getting them the right information, when these leaders come together, they understand the challenges. They see beyond just this working individual. They see them as their team members, as somebody that they can reach out to and ask questions and move forward. So resolving things has become much more easier as they get to know each other as leaders in this company. So I think that's it for the 2 slides that I had about leading at LiveRamp.
Wonderful. Shweta, thank you so much. And we actually had a really big volume of questions come through, so we're going to try to get through as many as we can. Thank you guys for so much great audience participation. And we did have one question that I answered live through the Q&A about printing the slides out. We can have those available for you absolutely afterwards. Just send me an email at morgan@blueboard.com and I can get you the PDF of those slides, no problem. So just to address the group. So the first question is, and you spoke to this a little bit, I know that you fly everybody in and that's a really big priority for the group, but is there any other approaches that you take for remote employees to be part of the program besides making sure that they all attend in person? And that's from Betsy.
We reach out. Yeah, we reach out to them in via phones or through our Blue Jeans platform. We talk to them about, if this is the right program for them. We also talk to their managers to make sure if this is the right program. If not, what could we do in the meantime to help them grow in their role? We also have coaching available internally with executives coach that we work with. So what we do is we do the needs analysis with that individual to make sure that if this program is not the right one for them, where else can we support them? Now also just to let you know that this program is more about leadership per se, not about what you need to do on a day-to-day basis as a manager. So we have another program that is more task-oriented, and we call it Manager Essentials. That focuses more on, okay, what do you do when somebody goes on leave and things like that. Those are the more task and managerial day-to-day things that, we thought would have a different place to discuss and, have people know what their rules, not rules, but policies are and how they need to function as a manager. And in these locations, because we are growing slowly and I have a really small team, we are looking at ways of scaling our program and providing these sessions in chunks. So maybe can we redesign them to have them done virtually and then have somebody on ground to support these discussions? So we're looking at all of that. We are not there yet.
Okay. Thank you. Next question is from Craig. He's asking if you kind of do anything different, knowing that some managers may have been promoted into their role as an existing internal candidate versus managers who you hire externally and might be starting their role at LiveRamp through this program. So is the content tailored differently to an external hire versus someone who was promoted from within, or did they go through the same type of content together as a cohort?
They go through the same content as a cohort, but the good part is we invite everybody to talk about their experiences. So if somebody's been at LiveRamp and has been promoted, if they have experiences they want to share about their journey at LiveRamp, the whole team gets to hear that and learn that. Similarly, anybody who's come from outside and had an experience in an amazing company, they can do the same. So the idea is it becomes a mixing pot for everybody to come, discuss, and learn from each other. So our way of approaching and dealing with the content is the same.
Okay, great. And then Gustavo was asking who kind of helps you conduct the session and how do you recruit people to, maybe present different sections to the team who's attending?
Awesome. So my team, Talent Enablement, we set the stage by the foundational principles. So if it's emotional intelligence, if it's about, situational leadership or things like that, we set the stage for the first initial few minutes. And then we invite our leaders, our internal leaders to come and present. Honestly, the best way we get our leaders is by either seeing them present somewhere or they reach out to us and they say, we saw somebody else present a couple of days back and we would like to do that too. So it's a mixed bag of how people approach us. And we are lucky we've never had to go out and actually recruit. We've had several people reach out to us. So that's been good. And of course, it also becomes a platform for that leader to hone their skills and to be ready to deliver something that they might not be comfortable with. In fact, that's one of the challenges we give the leader facilitators is pick a topic that you've never done before, and we will train you, we will guide you. So there's a lot of prep work that happens with them, which at the end helps everybody in the group. One thing I forgot to mention is we also started introducing leadership panels in the first day during lunchtime, because we want these leaders to come together also and answer questions. And it's really interesting to see how these leaders are, ready to answer questions and be vulnerable and talk about times when they were not really certain about decisions, but, took it and what were the consequences, what they learned from it, the good and the bad. So it's really heart to heart when you think about it as they talk about their experiences.
Okay, great. And we have time for just one more question. And I love this one that came in from Carmel. She's asking if you can share an example of a particular capstone project that has recently been shared out of the cohort.
Sure. I had alluded to something called goal setting, OKRs, that we do. So one of the capstone projects talked about, from their experience, the gaps that they have seen and some proposals that they had provided to make sure that goals are not being set in silos, cross-functional teams get a chance to look at each other's goals. So we took a lot out from that capstone project because we were able to directly apply and take it back to our leadership team. And the good part is actually, the leadership team was in the room when they were presenting. So it was not like HR is saying we need to, rectify this. It's the people and the businesses that they're saying that they are ready to make corrections. So I think where the information is coming from also really helps with some of our HR programs and the causes that we lead.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. William had a quick note on chat about it'd be really helpful as our next panelists go just to share how many employees are in each of your organizations. For Cindy, I know that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Cindy, but I believe you guys have between like 75 to 100 employees. And then Shweta, remind me how large LiveRamp is now, not counting the larger parent company.
Sure. At the start of this year, we were 450 employees. By December, we will be around 750.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so just for Tracy and for Adrian, feel free to share as you start your section how many people are working at your company. So great. We'll go ahead and move on. Shweta, thank you so much for all the great insight and all the questions. We'll definitely share those with the panelists after if we didn't get the chance to get to your question in case they can chat with you privately. But just for the sake of moving on, I'm happy to introduce Tracy Abbott next with OnDeck. And she's going to be sharing a little bit of her new goal setting process that they've just rolled out, and also speaking to how managers can really facilitate employee bonds and just better work-life happiness through recognition and appreciation. So feel free to take it away, Tracy.
Great. Thanks so much, Morgan. I really appreciate it. So OnDeck may be in a little bit of a different scenario in the sense that we are a public company. We were very much from a startup mentality, and as you can imagine, very short sprints into a maturing company, but still definitely that hybrid of startup culture versus, kind of maturing to that public company. So we have about 500 employees here at OnDeck. And for those of you not familiar, we do small business lending from a fintech perspective, getting those funds to our small business owners in quick turnaround times. So we have about 500 employees, as I said, the majority here in our Manhattan office off Broadway. We do have a large organization in Denver, and then we also have an Arlington, Virginia office, as well as a couple of subsidiaries in our Australia office, about 50 employees, and then growing in Canada as well. So one of the things as we were kind of going through our maturity phase, if you will, is, we started to think about, like I said, we were moving in small, 6-month sprints to a point where that was how we were doing our goal setting as a company. Every 6 months we were kind of shifting, not completely, separate, direction, of course, but we quickly started to realize getting some just general feedback from employees as we're listening and talking to leaders around the company about, like, where are we headed as a company? What is our strategy? Where are we going in the long term? So you know how it is. You've been there, right? You hear that around the office as you're having one-on-ones, and so that was certainly on our mind. But once we really took a look at our pulse survey results, the data was very clear. Not only were we hearing this, we were seeing this loud and clear from the survey results. in the questions that we asked, but also in the, verbatims and the open feedback that we were getting for our employees, like help us understand where we're going. So we took that data, we brought it and shared it with our executive committee team to say, we've been kind of talking about this, guys, but let's think about this. People, want to understand where we're headed. So thank goodness our executive team listened. That's always the first key, right? So they listened to the team members, to the survey data, and said, you know what, now is the time that we set our strategic direction for the company. So they really, spent a lot of time focusing on not just a one-year plan, but a 3-year plan of where we were heading as a company, and we've kind of coined that internally as our 3-2-1 strategy. And with that, we broke that down into year-over-year goals. And when we started thinking about the performance of our individuals, what we kind of realized is we're really, really good at, performance management. And when I say that, I'm talking about the review process, right? So we had a fantastic way of thinking about our self-reviews, our peer reviews, our manager reviews, and really getting that feedback every 6 months. What we really realized is that we were missing on that accountability and that motivation of setting big, audacious goals along with those company goals. So we really started to think about how do we get the focus in the right area, which is the goal setting. Shweta mentioned it, they really focused in on the OKRs. And, we really wanted to think about what framework makes the most sense for us. How can we really get our head around, where we're heading as a company, but also being thoughtful about the transparency and the alignment for the company overall, and ensuring every individual is able to see where they're tied in to the OnDeck 3-2-1 strategy. And so with, in mutual coordination with our EC committee, our EC team, they launched this fantastic roadmap to say, here's how we're getting to our 3-2-1 strategy. And as a part of that, we were able to launch this goals framework. And for those of you who are not familiar with V2MOM, this is Salesforce's methodology. They all speak to it. If you know anyone that works at Salesforce, they will talk about V2MOM like it is the gospel, which is fantastic. And it's values, vision, method, objections, and measurement. Similar to an OKR framework. The reason why OnDeck selected V2MOM specifically is because we really wanted to think about kind of objections and obstacles because of the clear, crisp alignment that we needed within our divisions. So we wanted to call that out openly. Now, we don't utilize the verbiage V2MOM. We have interpreted that and reimagined it as OD goals. It's just, we wanted to brand it and not feel like we were taking someone else's framework. So we've internalized that and made it fit for our team members. So that's the framework we used. Morgan, if you want to go to the next page, we talk a little bit about how this manifested. So like I mentioned previously, that the strategy roadshows in which our EC team went out and delivered was around the January timeframe of this year. So this is all happening real time, and something that we're all talking about. Rolling out these OD goals is something that we check in on a monthly basis to say how are we doing with our own goal setting. So we're drinking our own Kool-Aid, if you will. So what this progressed with a timeline perspective is the company, set their OD goal overall for the year. Then we started breaking that down into the different divisions. So each division came up with their own OD goal that was shared throughout their organization, so that people understood exactly, what the plan was for 2018 and how we could think about linking into that as we continue to hold workshops on the OD goal process. One of the things that we did that you guys may have utilized yourselves, but was really critical to us, is we nominated what we called OD goal influencers throughout the company. So we had at least one influencer in each division who could give us feedback. And when I say us, I'm talking about the people operations organizations. We call ourselves POPs. But really, someone we could talk to that ensured that this framework was working for the team, that we had a connection there. And we paired team members from the people operations organization paired with these influencers to deliver the training. So first we started with our departmental managers, made sure they understood the framework, what was expected of them, the next steps in the roadmap. And then we continued on with that down with all of our team members. We paired up with those influencers and ensured that everyone was really clear on the framework. And one of the things that we've really talked about from a change management perspective is 2018 is all about practice, right? So it's all about thinking about how we're aligning not only to the divisional goals, but how we're also aligning to the company goals and ensuring that the individual is able to grow and expand their career development by having this mutual goal setting with their leaders. So that's been really, exciting for us. And frankly, and it's given us an opportunity to not be perfect, right? we don't always have all the answers, and it's given us the ability to iterate as we've gone along. And one of the things that has been interesting that we ran into is with our current performance management system, we really ran into a roadblock in coming up with a tool that was going to work for us in this OD goal setting process. So, how we always have to turn on a dime, we quickly started saying, oh, wow, we've got to go look and find a tool that's going to work for us, because what we told was going to be delivered is not really going to work for us. So it's given us an opportunity to shift, to practice, to talk about that, and really hold our team members and leaders accountable for thinking through what their 90-day goals are, and then being ready to go in 2019 to really hone the system, the process, the cadence, so that we're able to move forward with 2019 plan, that's gonna roll out much smoother sailing. So anytime you have a new initiative, it's always a challenge to get into the cadence, to understand, what are going to be the challenges along the way. But I feel like, bringing in these influencers really helped us to understand where the roadblocks might be. Funny aside, when we got into our team member training, we had a list from a transparency perspective. We had cross-functional groups in there. So, it didn't matter what goal setting training you went to, you were seeing, for the first time, these team members were seeing all of the divisional goals laid out in the old OD goal format, or the V2MOM format. And it was funny, we had quite a few questions come up. It's like, wait a minute, we have competing priorities between revenue and product, or we have competing priorities between risk and revenue. And believe me, these have been reviewed many times by our executive teams. But it just goes to prove, as you go lower down into the organization, you start to really realize all of those potential conflicts are there. And I think that gave our team members the opportunity to be heard, to give feedback, and be motivated to say, okay, what I'm saying is matters, and we were quickly able to adjust, to update those goals for people to understand that everyone was on the same page. So back to that, transparency and alignment has really, that has really kind of helped us win the day. One of the things that we're doing with these, 90-day goal check-ins is to think about what's working with this goal, what's changed, and it's giving us an opportunity to shift, and so that we're not having, stagnant goals. As we all know, in growing organizations, goals change or become, obsolete sometimes quickly. So I think this process where check-in and every 90 days gives us an opportunity to tweak, get feedback, and then get us on the right path. One of the things we're also thinking through as we're selecting this new tool that will house our OD goals is really aligning to our new refreshed values that we have as an organization, and thinking through those, aligning those values against the conversations that our employees have, motivating them to kind of align to the company values. So that's our goal setting process. One of the things that I also wanted to share with you guys, and it sounds like we're all kind of doing some similar things, but as we move on to this program that we have called Lead Dev, and Morgan, you can go ahead and go to the next slide. So Lead Dev Solve actually is one of our new programs that frankly we've now moved to, open application, but we did, pilot for several different groups within the organizations. This is a kind of think on your feet training program, if you will, in which our leaders throughout the organization and our high performers are taking part in a multi-part training program designed to help our team members improve their ability to analyze problems, to generate solutions, and to present those solutions back to a team. So one of the things that this focuses in on is root cause analysis, thinking through brainstorming techniques. And for those of you that are familiar, this pyramid principle that really gives you a framework on how you're thinking about solving business problems specifically. And what's been so fantastic about this program is they're cross-functional teams that people have gone to work on that are business problems that need solutions that they're able to they're able to bring in tactical solutions that are actually adopted by the company. I'm sure you guys have all been a part of a program where you go into a room and you came up with these great ideas, but if they're not, in a format that can be, implemented on the job, sometimes it's not always the biggest use of our team members' time. So we're excited about this program, and essentially it's broken up into a couple of different types of, online, analyzing those problems in which they're able to go into a group training together, understand the frameworks, and then the final deliverable is actually presenting to a group of executive team members, which has been a lot of fun. We've seen people kind of think on their feet, present, be prepared, and then as the panel, we're able to rate them on the probability of implementation, how well the thought process was, how well they followed the framework, and then their ability, like I said, to implement real-time solutions. So we're really excited about that program. Once again, those are tied to the values throughout the organization overall, and aligned once again. And like I said, in combination, Lead Dev and then our goal setting process, we're giving our high potentials, our high performers, if you will, and our leaders at the organization, the opportunity to really make an impact and drive through, you know, the overall company objectives, and develop ourselves and our team members real time. So we're excited about those programs, Morgan.
So quick questions for Tracy. One came through from Margot at Imagine Media. I'm not sure if she's still on the line, but besides goal setting, are there other tips specifically at OnDeck that you used for inspiring new managers to lead?
Yeah,
any other tips you want to share?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think during those goal setting conversations, that's giving us an opportunity to think about the career, right? So where do we want to head as an individual? What do they get excited about? I think Shweta hit on this a little bit, but you know, are they interested in going down the leadership track, and how do we build development plans for them to get there, coaching and feedback? Or is it an individual contributor path, and once again leads into this lead dev process of what opportunities are you looking for, and how do we help design those for you, right? How do we get you into different projects and programs that'll stretch skills?
Okay, great. And then one more from Greta, who's with Mimosa. What are some tips for incentivizing employees towards their goals? I know you spoke briefly just about recognition, but what other kind of ideas do you have for incentivization to make sure that people are excited about their goals, whether that's through verbal recognition, any other types of awards you give out, if you want to share more on that?
Yeah, thanks for that, Maureen. So one of the things that we're doing right now, as I mentioned this previously, but we launched our new values, but we're reaching out to find out who is really living those values on the street, and we're doing shout outs in our town halls from our CEO, who's really recognizing great performance where individuals or teams have gone above and beyond, you know, the expectations with either a small business customer, you know, coming together as one team, which is one of our values. So cross-functional implementations between, you know, it could be parts of any of the organization, but obviously our tech and product teams work very closely together. So really sharing that out with the rest of the company on living those values.
Okay, wonderful. So we're going to go ahead. I know for some people we may have to drop off, but we are really excited to have Adrian's content. So we're going to stay on for another 10 minutes if you want to stay with us. So on that note, I'm going to be passing it over to Adrian at Prezi. She's going to talk through their new competency framework and how they really use that to empower and streamline manager career conversations with their direct reports. So take it away, Adrian.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Morgan, for having me. I'm going to try to be even faster than I was planning to, so most people can hear the majority of this content. So I will talk a little bit about the continuous feedback framework that we have been implementing at Prezi in the past, well, more than a year at this point now, and how competency frameworks connect into that. I know somebody asked the questions. Prezi currently has around 350 employees overall. We have 3 locations, one in San Francisco and 2 in Europe. So it's basically one in Budapest and one in Riga, Latvia. So we have a lot of challenges that we are dealing with whenever it comes to whatever program or philosophy that we are trying to do, that, you know, we have to battle with the cultural differences, as well as, you know, be very conscious of that. But let me just go back to continuous feedback. As we all know, managers really, like, you know, play a key role in every employee's growth and career, and the reason why we are here today and talking about it, because growing and training them is one of the seeds to retain the employees for employee engagement. Yeah, and every organization focuses on somewhat level on some type of performance management, and all we hear left and right all the time is feedback, feedback, feedback. Everybody wants feedback. Everybody wants constructive feedback, but like how are you actually doing it is the hard part. And when it comes to manager education, being able to have hard conversations and leading feedback conversations, giving feedback and constructive that aligns with the employee's growth is very, very key. So when it comes to scaling managers along this continuous feedback framework is very important that they not just only learn it as managers, but also as employees. So let me talk 1 minute about what is the continuous feedback model that we implemented. This basically goes, kind of breaks the relationship with this once or twice a year HR kicked off like feedback cycles, and remains a one annual HR kicked off feedback. And during the year, it basically focuses on different pieces and different feedback loops that is driven by the managers and the employees based on when it makes sense and from whoever it makes sense to ask for feedback. So you have one annual feedback round that we still keeping, and then during the year, instead of having like formal peer feedback sessions or manager feedback sessions, they basically, it's in their hands to designate when they are asked for feedback and how are they actually like phrasing it. It's a huge emphasis on manager accountability over here. And we connected this, I wrote it down that we connected this to our compensation philosophy as well. If somebody's interested, I'm really happy to connect outside of the webinar, but I'm afraid we don't really have too much time to talk about that part. But throughout the year, thanks to the continuous feedback, they basically can ask when it makes sense to ask for feedback, and we have a tool that supports that basically. So in a traditional twice a year feedback session, you basically don't have anything that is happening between like January and July, let's say. But with continuous feedback is basically if I finished with a project and I have been working on getting better from a, I don't know, communication competency, for example, then I can check in at any given time with my peers, with my manager, and ask for more feedback. Basically, what we did is that this has been a great base for having continuous conversations and adapting to the philosophy that not everybody is hitting their development milestones at the same time, which is a pretty normal thing because we are all different and we all have different priorities. So this really sets the base for setting the individual goals, having OKR conversations, talking about improvement areas, and of course achievements, which connects into potential conversations for compensation change as well. Morgan, if you can go to the next slide, and I can quickly hop on the competency framework, which is, I will tell you a little bit about how we connected into the continuous feedback. So a lot of organizations have, most of them probably at certain size have established some type of leveling that based on either like tenure, sometimes they are based on seniority, sometimes based on kind of a mix of that. And you can see a lot of organizations, and really happy to see that you know, they combine some like softer skills and expectations in it as well. But at Prezi, we knew that as part of the continuous feedback and within setting expectations and defining to what to work on, and therefore having career conversations on the longer term, we knew that we wanna help managers and employees understand that there are two big buckets here. There is the what and the how. So the what is the actual work that somebody does, the actual skills that you need to do your job. I'm talking about hard skills, like in this case, like if I say it's an engineer, it's like, you know, learning new languages or something like that. Or in fact, case like a manager is like just doing the operational pieces of people management. But like in today's world, when everybody wants feedback and we all talk about communication a whole lot, it's the answer to the question is how somebody is doing it, and what are the behaviors and the competencies that are being presented during doing your job. The what is just as if not more important. And we basically, if I try to reflect this down for growing a manager, it's, and somebody asks us like, what do you, like, how do you interview a manager? Yeah, like for us, when we interview a manager, for example, yes, it's important that a manager understands how operationally works of, you know, working and managing somebody, but like for us is very, very important. Is this manager able to communicate priorities? Is this manager able to have a hard conversation with a manager? Is this manager will be able to phrase their constructive feedback, for example? So you often, you know, have that question, either if you're a manager or even if you're an employee, you have this question, yeah, what does it take for me to go to the next step? Then the answer is what we have established is these competency frameworks across different departments, that it's really list out a set of behaviors and competencies, and I'm talking about the how here, the soft skills that are mapped along the different levels. It doesn't matter how many levels you have, which is basically creates this helpful guide to drive growth conversations as well as set expectations. And we can talk about this for just generally employees, but for specifically for our topic today as growing managers, in our competency frameworks for each department, actually, whoever is in a managing role, they actually have manager competencies built in certain levels. Yeah, there are different expectations from a new coming manager versus a director level versus a VP level. Yeah, that you expect very different things from a leadership principle perspective. Your leadership principles as a set, those are your competencies, but like how is it levels up from 1 to 2 and so on is basically what the competency matrix is. And why is this helpful? It's basically a helpful tool because during one-on-ones and throughout a performance evaluation and identifying improvement areas, this is like a fantastic help to answer these questions. What does it take for me to go to the next step? So this way, employees and managers have something to go back to and work on those improvement areas and develop their competencies. So they walk away, if they change roles at once or they just change jobs, they walk away with more than, hey, I learned a new coding language, rather than, hey, I not just only did that, but I also, you know, grew as a professional because now I developed, you know, on a much better business judgment throughout this and this and this project. And I loved, I think Shifta was talking about the leadership principles. That's kind of what I'm talking about when it's about the how to give feedback, how to have hard conversations, how do you handle certain situations, how do you emphasize empathy and all of that. So that's pretty much what I wanted to share about the continuous feedback and how competency frameworks that we have established in each department kind of ties into that. That's it. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have. I try to be very speedy here.
Thank you, Adrienne, so much. I think it's a really great topic to cover, and we do have a few good questions that came through. So first from Vidya, this is pretty relevant to what you were sharing, because I know when we first chatted last week about the competency piece and how you really want to have a project that someone conquers to really display the skills that they're working on as an individual. She had a question about, or they had a question about just, you know, these projects are great and it's really important to bring up these new managers or people who are growing in their roles to have face time with executive leadership, but it can be a kind of striking a balance of time commitment. So when you're thinking through the projects that these individuals will take on to really display that these skills are taking into account? How do you manage the time from the teams that they're working with, and how do you kind of recruit people, knowing that you don't want to dominate someone's time for these projects and distract them from their core roles at Prezi?
Yeah, the key is here that like throughout, like you should be working on these competencies that you manage to identify with or without the help of competencies throughout your everyday work, your everyday projects that you're doing. And some of these you can get from A to B from an improvement standpoint on a slower time, and some of them are you have to show a lot of examples to really have it down. Yeah, like if you just take a real life example, it's like at the beginning of your 20s, it's like learning accountability as an adult will show over time, because you have like different things that you take on life. It's the same with basically like these kind of competencies as well. Like you identify, I don't know, somebody as a manager needs to get better of, I don't know, just manager accountability standpoint, because maybe that's a feedback that somebody got back, or just get better in like, getting listening better or one-on-ones better, then they basically like do these not as a project, so-called, rather than they exercise and work on these competencies and skills with the help of mentoring and coaching from their manager or from their HRPPs throughout their everyday work. I'm not sure if this answers your question.
No, I think that's super helpful. Thank you. And then one more question from Tim. He was asking, how did you initially identify and roll out and therefore kind of communicate what those competencies look like, knowing that there's probably a lot of overlap between departments or levels or things like that? So yeah, how did you identify the ones that are necessary, and how did you roll out and communicate those competencies to the employee base?
It's a fantastic question, actually, because we were at that point in those shoes of like, how do we start this? And I think the key is that like we as HR have been part of every single one of the departments like competency framework, so we can ensure that overall the company values and goals and leadership principles and so on are actually like pretty much like the same on whether we talk about the marketing competency or an engineering competency, meaning like a leadership principle competency shouldn't be different on a level 5 in marketing versus in engineering. So we kind of dare to ensure it, but like, of course, there are different competencies in every department, next to the fact that communication or stakeholder management will be actually like present in every one of them. But we work with the head of the department who has the vision and the directors that they choose to involve, really, because they have the vision of, hey, this is the kind of team I want. These are the important values and professional things that's going to help create a career path for these people who want to stay in marketing. I'm just going to keep saying marketing here. And basically it is a process. It was a process for this specific department. Actually, like 2-3 months was about just identifying these areas of how these areas of behaviors that were long-term going to define the kind of professional in that given department that they think will succeed. Therefore, they can build and have career conversations later on. So it's not just about the roles itself, rather than, again, like the how. So working and kicking it off with identifying these leadership team is the answer here.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah. And then, like you said, just making sure that everybody is on the same page for what those expectations are when you're thinking about movement into a new role, and having a really clear guide on, these are the expectations for what skills you'll need to develop as you advance. So really having mutuality and alignment there as well, I'm sure, is super important.
That's correct. Yes.
Wonderful. Well, Adrienne, thank you so much. We're going to quickly close up knowing that we've definitely gone over time, but thanks everyone. We still have a huge group on sticking with us through the end. So just to wrap up, we learned a few things today. The first really from Cindy is how important engagement surveys can be and how wonderful it is to have questions in your engagement survey set to continue to make sure that your manager to employee relationships are supported, as well as having your values align with that so that everybody's on the same page for how important that relationship is within the organization. From Shweta, we heard about training programs and how important those can be to really set up managers for success as they're growing in your company. From Tracy, we learned about how wonderful it is to just make sure that managers have effective goal setting conversations and that everybody's on the same page for what that looks like. So we'll call that mutuality here, making sure that people are set up for success because they've created those goals together. And that also helps just with motivation for employees as they're working towards those 90-day goal periods. She also spoke to the importance of recognition and how great that is for making sure that employees are seen and valued from their managers, whether that's through verbal praise or through experiences that might be more tied to what we do at Blueboard, something that lets the employee really go out and about and do something for themselves that they wouldn't have otherwise afforded. Like I mentioned earlier, some of the offerings we have might be doing skydiving for the first time, crossing something off your bucket list, or just reconnecting with your family through a quality time, like going to the zoo or taking a cooking class together. And lastly, Adrienne was so great to share her continuous feedback framework and how that really sets managers up for success by having a really black and white conversation with their employees about their progress and the skills that they still need to work on to get to that next level. And just as a way to stay in touch, we talked about our resources page at Blueboard. That's your home for any ebooks, white papers, and to stay in touch on upcoming events, webinars, and in-person events like the one we're having in San Francisco next week. And also just for Reflektive, they have a really great ebook that talks about what makes a great manager. You can download at reflektive.com/no-bad-managers. So feel free to stay in touch with both of us. We're both, like I mentioned, putting on events on the regular and would love to continue sharing thought leadership and great insights with you. So on that note, we are all wrapped up. We'll be sharing a recording and recap with the group tomorrow afternoon. Any immediate questions, feel free to reach out, and we'll look forward to seeing you online next time. Thank you so much.